content is so critical.
Yeah.
It's critical. That's what we want to hear. Good
Thanks,
content.
Yeah.
I can drop a few more sound bites if you like.
No, I like it when I hear.
One in the hand is two in the bush.
Okay, for you, you're going to sit up straight because we're going to get you up forward into this camera here. We're going to center you over this way. Set this here. Perfect.
Do I look very shiny?
What's that?
Do I look shiny today?
I'll give you some color in a minute.
Thanks.
All right, so here you go. Perfect. One more inch over to that. Right. Perfect.
You came fully coordinated. It looks like we're matching.
I do try and dress well. I am red-green colorblind.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, not well. It happens with, mostly with men.
Oh.
Perfect. Rolling here.
Yeah, so at one point I had a pair of khaki pants that got somehow into something in the wash with something red.
Oh.
And I was told they came out salmon, though I couldn't see that. So that day I dressed like a clown, unbeknownst to me.
Okay, here you go, here you go, here you go.
Okay. He's secretly a makeup artist.
Got the lashes on. I love it.
I forgot to wear my lashes today. Is it going to show, do you think?
Funny. All right.
Oh, that's better.
All right, gotta focus. Ready? One more punch of focus for Eric.
Have you
All
heard
right.
the term earworm before?
No.
So it's when a song gets stuck in your head and you hear it over and
Oh,
over again?
yeah.
That's what it's
Go
called.
for it. When
So excited.
Go ahead, talk a little bit.
Hello, hello.
Louder.
A little louder and a little bit more enthusiastically.
Go ahead, keep talking.
So you're telling me about the earworm.
I've
Right,
always,
good. Eric, go ahead, talk.
I've always found that on camera it's key to have good diction.
All right. All right, roll it.
Very
Go
good.
for it when you're ready.
Welcome to the LA Home Show. I am your host, Natasha Phillips, and today we have with us real estate expert Eric Brown. Hi, Eric. We're so happy to have you with us.
It's just exciting to be here.
Great. So, Eric, I'd love to hear how you got involved in the industry.
Ooh, I mean, it's a long topic, so I'll give you the Cliff Notes version to start with.
Can go with the long notes.
17 years ago, give or take, maybe slightly more, right out of college, I got into real estate investing. I'm originally from the Midwest, and so I was buying, fixing, and selling homes with a couple of college buddies. We stepped on nails and electrocuted ourselves, and on our first house, we made a small profit, and we did the math and learned that we made about $1.65 an hour. And we said, okay, we can do this better. And so since then, I've been involved in a number of what are called flip or rehab projects. And that was my first foray into real estate. I started to represent clients several years thereafter and then built a couple of teams in 2 markets. One there in the Midwest, I'm originally from Minnesota, and then also here in Beverly Hills.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. I'm sure you must have had some hair-raising experiences.
Oh, so
I'd
many.
love to hear one of them.
So many. So a great example is when you walk into these properties, they're always like a black eye. They look worse before they look better. And so one of those particular properties that I had walked through, the downstairs basement had been painted entirely black. Odd for a basement in this particular market. And so there was a door that was shimmied shut and it had a lock on it with the lock being removed. And there was a printed copy of a sheet that had said, no matter what you hear inside, don't walk in. And it was a foreclosed home. And so of course we'd need to do an inspection of the property prior to myself and the contractor and the investor wanting to purchase the property. And so we walked in and there were shackles on the walls and on the floor. And I don't know what had happened in that room, but we still ended up buying it. And we ended up turning it into a marvelous property afterwards. But that was one of the strangest things I had seen.
Oh, it has a happy ending.
It does have a happy ending, absolutely. We didn't keep the bondage room. We ended up moving on from the bondage room.
So how do you keep your passion alive every day?
Yeah, I mean, you have to really enjoy what you do. Passion is such a great word. There has to be a greater purpose, I have found, than just what it seems like people traditionally get into real estate for. And that is either the flexibility, the art of the big deal, or the what most people would think are very large commission checks. And there has to be more to it than that. The desire to serve is great. The flexibility is a lot of fun, and the entrepreneurial aspect of this business, every day you're meeting different people, you're seeing different homes, different areas, different product, and if that is work, that's a pretty fun day. And for me, I find it to be so empowering to be involved in someone's life choices. So yes, I understand that buying a home is a product, but in reality, it's generally based on a really large life decision. Someone is expanding their family, they're getting married, they're downsizing, they decide they need more square footage, they won the lottery. Whatever it may be, it's generally based on a large life decision. And as brokers, we get to be involved with that. We get to help them in moving on to this next phase of life, and that's wonderful. It's a great experience to be able to assist people like that, and for that to be work and that to have its own set of meeting is pretty rewarding, beyond the big conventional commission checks and the flexibility of the work.
You make it sound like such fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when it's been some time. So for me, as I had mentioned, it's been 17, 18 years of working with houses and properties and land and product along those lines. Like I said, there has to be more to it than just the paycheck. And so it's fun. For me, it's been, at least at this point, it's been several years now that I have been in this market, originally from the Midwest. And so the adventure starts all over. You're learning new areas and price points and houses and architectural styles and viewpoints and the stories behind not only the home itself, but the people that have lived there or that are moving in there. I find it to be fascinating. I think of it a lot like, and this says a bit of where I'm from, but I think it's a lot like a snowflake. Every day is a little bit different.
I love that. So having worked in both markets, I'm sure you have some interesting and amazing properties that you've worked on. I'd love to hear about some of them.
Yeah, so the price points are quite a bit different in the Midwest than they are here. On average, it's about 1/5 or 1/6 the price point. There's no such thing as a $20 million home in Minnesota, let alone a $100 or a $200 million home. So there, luxury starts at a much lower price point. I had worked on probably one of the larger properties there, was a 56-acre estate that was created and positioned to a certain time period. The home was built as if it would have been built in the 1700s. And it was a vacation home for the family that had owned the property. And so still had gas lamps for lighting that you could use. The kitchen and the bathrooms were obviously modernized, but everything else throughout the home screamed American Revolution era product. And so that was interesting. The way that we marketed that property was quite a bit different, a bit more unique than you would do a traditional home, a 3-bed, 2-bath house. Here, one of the most recent stories that I had is a client of mine that is from the Philippines. And he owned dealership rights to several different types of auto companies that he had sold throughout the Philippines. And so was looking at purchasing one of his several vacation homes that was around the globe. And so looking at the type of home that he wanted, the modernization of that house, how his family would utilize it, only being in the home for 4 to 6 times out of the year, safety, amenities, types of entertainment that he wanted, and the house that he got was practically brand new construction. It was brought down to the studs and very expensive. It was really cool to see the transition of what he had in the Philippines compared to the homes that he had, say, on the East Coast or in Canada, or his first purchase here in the Beverly Hills, Los Angeles market. Fascinating.
That sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
So what would you recommend to new agents coming into the industry?
I get that question a lot. So people will often wonder what it takes to break into. I have found that in this market, there's around an 80 to 85% failure rate. So if there were, I'll just take a hypothetical number, but there's 1,000 new agents that come into the market in a year, 850 of them are going to be gone by the end of the year, give or take. And usually the largest challenge is a lack of prospecting, a lack of being able to find consistent people to work with. And I would call that creating a pipeline of business. And so that starts, I heard a great quote at one point that when is the best time to plant a tree? 15 years ago. And the second best time is today. So we build a pipeline of business. There is no paycheck in real estate. You help someone buy or sell or rent a property, and you get paid once that transaction completes itself. But someone thinks about it months or years in advance. And so you need to start planting those seeds months or years in advance of when they would actually want to make a purchase. So for that brand new agent, I would tell them to start whatever it is, any method that you're going to prospect. And there's dozens of different ways that you can do business, from the tried and true traditional of door knocking or open houses or mailers or going to networking events, to the new age, which might include websites or social media or some type of retargeting based on the internet. There's so many different ways with which you can get business. You just have to pick the ones that work best for you as a new agent and stick with them as much as you can.
So how do you feel that social media has changed the industry?
Oh, it's interesting. So real estate, like anything that would be, I guess you'd call it sales or consulting or advisor-based business, it's a contact sport. So we all make contacts, and there's many different ways that will work, but it still has to be like this. It's eyeball to eyeball, face to face. A conversation in our business is super helpful. People need to, and generally I have found it to be in this order: like you, trust you, and know that you will do a good job. So if I'm technically sound as a real estate agent, someone knows that you do a great job, but I am not likable, no one's going to want to work with me. They have to like me first. So social media just creates another tool with which we can start a conversation, but inevitably it still comes to the face-to-face. So there's several different platforms that agents can use: direct mail, email, text message, phone call, events, physical meetings, what have you, and social media. All of those tools are ways basically to drive or create a relationship. And so I find social media can be a lot like how it has affected real estate, can be very similar to how has it affected the dating world. So people now can swipe left or swipe right or go on different apps, and that starts a conversation, but you still have a date. Like, you still have to go and connect with that person, assuming that's what you'd like to do. Real estate is no different. So I mentioned this a little bit before, but in social media, I have now engaged in the past couple of years using 4 of the main social media platforms: Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and really decided to engage with my audience. And by that I mean daily posts, direct messages, likes, comments, connections with people based on their posts. And it's taken a beat. I would say between a year to a year and a half of really doing that consistently. And now people are starting to raise their hand and take on that next step of engaging in a conversation to have that first date.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah,
I hope it continues.
Thank you. I mean, it took a while to be able to get to that point, but now it seems like a rolling stone has gathered no moss, and as we keep pushing that rock down the hill, it will continue to bear some fruit.
Great. So, Eric, how do you, what kind of tips and tricks do you have for potential clients?
Sure.
Yeah.
So like, how would I get them, say a home buyer or a home seller or an investor, or if you could elaborate a bit?
Oh, sure. So I'm thinking of like somebody wants to work with you. When would you recommend that they reach out to you? When, how do they engage you?
Yeah, absolutely. So every one of those platforms I have made open to my audience, so to speak. I'm in a fortunate position in my career now where I've also built a team, so I have more than just my eyeballs that are looking at these various platforms. When an email comes in, when a phone call comes in, when someone reaches out on social media, generally it's based on me engaging my audience first. So I'm a big believer in the 3 E's of engagement, education, and entertainment in the way that I reach out. I try and provide as much value as I can. And so some of the posts or the messaging or the letters that I send out could be funny and humorous. Some of them could be educational based on what's happening in the market. And from there, people will engage in my messaging. They'll ask an open-ended question. They'll make a comment back. They'll tell me their brother's, uncle's, cousin's dentist is thinking about buying or selling a home, and would it be okay for them to touch base if they had questions? And then I always try and find a way to level up. So like a video game, I'll take that first step as the first level of the video game, and then try and progress them to finally where I win the game at the end, which is helping them buy or sell a home. But with each one of those levels, so starting from a conversation online or on the phone, to engaging in a nurture relationship where I continue to stay in touch with them. I send them love letters or love emails or anything that would continue to add value, as I mentioned, to the point where we have that first date, which would be a first meeting. And at that point, I'm always trying to differentiate myself compared to all the other agents that are out there in the marketplace. In Los Angeles, I think the number is around 40,000 agents. And there's around 70,000 home sales, give or take, that happen in the Los Angeles area. So if you do the math, that's less than 2 per agent. You can't make a career out of that or service enough people that way. So we have to make a point of not being commoditized. We have to differentiate ourselves. I'm very different, hopefully, than the 70,000 other agents that are out there. You use all of those different touch points to try and differentiate.
Well, that's good advice.
At least an attempt at it.
So what recommendations do you have for somebody who's just entering the market and looking to buy a house?
It's a phenomenal question. Again, when you look at so many different ways that a market can go, it can be based on trends, it can be based on seasonality, it can be based on the economics. We have gone over the course of the past 8-9 years, we've seen a recession to a massive increase to many people now that are predicting at some point for the market to go through an adjustment period. At any given time in the marketplace, there could be a difference between now and 6 months from now. And so how does someone make a good decision? I'm biased, of course, because I am a real estate professional, but a conversation is free. I have found a missed opportunity is not free. It can have some major consequences behind it. So as a starting point, I would always say, have a conversation with a professional or two. And that could be someone who is a real estate broker. It could be someone who works in mortgage. It could be someone who works in wealth management. Anything to do with houses is helpful to have a conversation and start to gather some of that great information. I think that the average buying or selling cycle from when someone says, I'm thinking about doing this thing, to when they actually do it, depending on the marketplace, is 6 to 18 months. And that's because most people will gather information. They'll also experience a number of agents over the course of that time. The bus bench, the billboard, the open house, the Facebook posts, they'll see a lot of agents that are out there. Engage them, have a conversation and start to gather information. And then from there, there's generally a fantastic sequence that happens when someone says, I'm ready to take a next step beyond just gaining an education or getting some additional information. And from there, it's the sequence of either buying or selling. And like anything else, there is a best practice to be able to do that. A story that I often give is, I probably could change the engine out of my car by looking at YouTube videos and buying a book. I would be terrible. And it would take me hours and hours and would probably cost me more than if I went to a mechanic. The mechanic's much better at it than I am. I could probably stitch my leg if I got a major wound. I am not going to be as good at it as a doctor would. So I'm more than willing to utilize the professional. And the more severe it gets, the better. So if I have a major heart ailment, I'm not fixing that myself. Like, I'm going to go to the pro for it. What's so interesting about real estate is how often people will work with someone that they like or know for generally one of the largest financial transactions that they might go through in their life. If someone is selling or buying a home here, that's a pretty big financial decision. And why you would put that in the hands of someone, hey, you just know them and you like them, and you don't necessarily know if they're great, is beyond me. I've never really understood that. So I would recommend to people that if you have someone you like, great. Talk to other people that you know that would be either a little bit more seasoned, have a little bit of experience, or that you can at least glean some additional knowledge to bring back to the person that you know so they can use those tools, especially if that first person doesn't have quite the same cachet in their business.
Great. So Eric, as our final question, I'd love to know, what are you excited about right now? It could be personal or work related.
So I have a natural curiosity in all things. And I have heard that great life balance encompasses a general wheel. And I'm probably going to miss most of them. But it is physical, spiritual, emotional, work-related, family-related. There's topics that if you have great balance in your life, you have happiness in all of those things. And generally I find that me having a natural curiosity, I'm a glass half full guy instead of a half empty guy. And so I always love what the next day will bring. I try and live in the moment as much as I can, not only on a business level, but at a personal level. So it's fun for me, as we talked about this rolling stone that gathers no moss, each day pushes my business to a different level that it wasn't before. And it introduces me to relationships both business and personal, that I didn't have before. And so that curiosity brings me to new levels of the video game that I wasn't able to experience yesterday. And I find that to be consistently fascinating.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, Eric, thank you so much for being with us. And thank you all for watching the LA Home Show, where we discuss all things real estate, interior design, and much, much more.